First part of the video will be about a rabbit hole based on time and date stamps not being recorded accurately or consistently. We're going to start with something that everybody can look up on YouTube, and you probably found the video for it, but I'm going to describe it the way it's supposed to be according to the NATO designation for the cartridge. The 12.7 by 99 millimeter cartridge. 50 BMG. Why don't we just call it that? Because naming standards. To get rid of confusion, they give it a designation like that. Even cartridges like 556223 are based on two different standards. They're almost identical. They're almost, but not quite, completely compatible. And if you're not aware of it, that's a .22 rifle. It's a .22 caliber rifle. Instead of shooting .22 caliber anemic cartridges, it shoots a hopped up version of it. And a 50 BMG cartridge is a ridiculously upscale version of the same damn thing. Cartoonishly so. So let's get on with it. And yes, there is a .22 caliber rifle cartridge that's even bigger. Well, it's a 22 millimeter. It's a joke, by the way. But anyway, no, it's real. But you looked up this video for that. But let's get on with this one. The 50 BMG from 1921, approximately, that's a hint. The Norwegian Defense Forces in the 1960s wanted to make a multi-purpose version of it. They wanted to take advantage of the large amount of capacity a half-inch diameter hunk of metal has, that's about that long, has to give you to do all sorts of weird shit, incendiaries, explosives, whatever. So in the 1960s, they started that initiative. And then they ended up with a multi-purpose concept of standard sets 20 years later, approximately in 1981. Then redesign worked for another 8 years or whatever. By 1989, at the latest, again, time and date stamp issues, we get the NM140MP multi-use projectile from a company that was called RAUFOUS, Raufoss. Now, I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's Norwegian for Red Waterfall. That was an actual company name. This was gradually reworked until a renamed version became the Mark, or MK211. Now we've gone through name changes. The thing looks identical, and it does some specific thing. And Red Waterfall has nothing to do with it, but oddly enough, it does in this case. Sometime between 1989 and 1998, dyslexics untie, we have a time frame of when that cartridge, the Mark 211, was created. And we do not have a clear designation from the company of when that was done, because the patent for it, the one you find, is from like 2004. Because they did another revision. This was a long duration of time. Over 20 years, almost 30. Of people mucking about trying to perfect it because it's for piercing armor, and the armor kept changing. So it was never really finalized. It'll always be changing. The design of it was made very clever. If you hit a hard target filled with soft targets like a vehicle, or you hit a hard target on a soft target, a person wearing body armor, it should do a very narrow range of things. Measure the depth of a human body, about that big, let's say 1.5 feet, 16 inches, 14 inches. That should click something in your head concerning number 4 buckshot fired at 7 meters or 7 yards for self-defense purposes out of a shotgun with a barrel length of 18 inches. FBI standard, buckshot standard, stopping power standard, lethality standard. It's based on human body depth. Making a little tiny intelligent bomb out of dumb material so it can't be tricked into going off by accident that would have the effect of hitting armor, going in exactly that far inside of a vehicle, and detonating, spreading a 30-degree shrapnel pile by blowing apart little bits of metal and still having an armor penetrator in the center of it. But if it hit a person, it would explode after they went through them, so technically, or actually literally, it would cause only the same amount of damage that a standard 50 BMG would that's used conventionally as just an inert projectile. That's a very odd level of holy crap engineering you have to do with something you're firing at what speed, barrel length, those can all change this. So yeah, it's not really a wonder why it took so long for it to be created. And yeah, it does create a spray pattern of shrapnel that will go through other armor and probably kill everybody in the vehicle. But it's for shooting engines. but it's also for shooting people inside of a armored vehicle, actual targets. On the other hand, a random person, not even an armed person that's hit with it, is only as damaged as they would be if they were hit by the projectile, aimed at them deliberately or not. International law during war, if you shoot somebody, it's supposed to wound them so that people are encouraged to drag them away from the line. It's advantageous for everybody that if somebody's wounded, they're out, and at least one, probably two people, maybe more, are required to remove them from the battlefield. This makes it to where if you can make this logistically expensive, dealing with people having to have more medics than shooters, the war is over. So that's why the laws and rules are set that way for war. However, if it goes through at certain angles, it would explode in the target or just within the skin as exit. Yes, a half-inch hole in a person would probably be a bigger hole on the exit, but they'd have a likelihood of survival that's above 50%. You want that in your opponent so that you take out 3 people with only having to wound 1. So, having heard all of that, that's dead-ass information that was transferred to a group of people that wanted to outlaw it because it was an explosive round. It won't explode in a person, even if they're wearing armor. If they're wearing 2 layers of armor, it still doesn't. They found that out in ordinary body armor people wore. Unless you're wearing 1-inch plates, it's not going to do this. Other things. So, just thought it was interesting that it rabbit-holed because I couldn't find all the information. Anyway, that was from a company complicating itself by being named NAMO, Nordic Ammunition, 1998. It's composed of a company that only started a year earlier in Finland called Pietra, can't pronounce it, and Sweden's company called Celsius that I can't even find data on. And this originated from a company from 1896. Now we're getting major dyslexia inducer stuff. Norway's Raufoss Ammunition Fabriker, aka Red Waterfall Ammunition Fabricator, or Red Waterfall Ammo Company. Very anti-Norwegian way of doing things. Too easily pronounced and translated. Was that really Norwegian? That's not very Norwegian of you. It could be worse. It could be Welsh. So anyway, let's get on with it. Tracking it down was complicated by the name changes, company names, all that sort of things. Patents made years later, patents years earlier that didn't have the data, confusing data, mass hysteria, and the designation. 50 BMG doesn't tell you when it was made. 140 MP doesn't seem to match anything. MK 211 doesn't tell you it's marked 211, meaning it's probably the 211th try. So let's try this. WD-40. Part of the name of the video, hopefully. 20 millimeter, 0.81 inch. That's not 20 millimeter necessarily, is it? 12 gauge. 12 gauge is supposed to be about 73 caliber, 0.73. Pistols, shotguns, rifles. Rifle shotgun? Yeah. So let's talk. Let's bring up where this started. The rabbit holing, very similar. Someone on a forum, Quora, asked, is there a handgun that fires shotgun shells? Now, the most common example for that is a 410 shotgun shell. If you're not aware of it, it's like a 45 Colt bullet, a stereotypical bullet from movies and cartoons and even toys. It's emulated a lot because it's easy to mold and it looks like a bullet. It's a cartoonishly simple-looking bullet. But a 45 caliber, if it has a long enough chamber length, can actually chamber, if you force it or sometimes easily, a 410 shotgun shell. So it can fire a shot. And if you have a long gun, it doesn't have to have rifling. You need rifling if you're firing a solid projectile bullet, but if you're firing shot, that's actually a bad idea. If you're using a pistol, I don't know if it matters, but you get the idea. Anyway, other than that, people brought up other examples. The 10 gauge flare gun. But it's not legally a problem. Other person saying you have to get ATF paperwork done. It's $200 tax stamp. Other people saying this one is totally a 12 gauge one because it ends in 12, because it was 1912. Or its name ends in 20 or 22 or 18, so those must be millimeter ranges. No, those are years again. And other confusions. If you can chamber a modern cartridge that you can buy at Walmart or any other store or at a hunting store, Easily is defined as if you're going hunting or sports shooting and they're available more than once a year in bulk, that is defined as 5 cartridges. If that exists, the gun is automatically declared to be regulated by the ATF. It is not obsolete. Yes, a 10 gauge flare gun, if it's a steel barrel, that can physically tolerate having, quote unquote, any cartridge at all fired out of it, that means you can fire a blank out of it, is legally fair game for the ATF to regulate. And they can choose to regulate things that are antiquated as well if they want. So yes, they are regulated. And no, there wasn't a 12 gauge version of that flare gun that was on the forum. It was just made in 1912. Or it was just Model 12. And the other one that was 22 or 20, again, the same thing. Now we're going to bring up Russians being fans of Westerns. The Russians decided to make a rifle-sized, quote-unquote, firearm, pistol grip, that looked like an old-school long-barrel pistol, specifically looking like a revolver 6-shot 22, scaled up to 88 Magnum, Johnny Dangerously. No, to 81 caliber, aka 12-gauge shotgun. It was a 5-shot version, and they made a rifle version, but they deliberately made it look exactly like a 22 caliber long pistol. It was at one time a very serviceable and standard shooting pistol for all sorts of purposes. It's been remade so many times, nobody really knows what its original purpose was. Doesn't matter. But they made it, dead ass, a long gun. It had a buttstock, but you could fold it up or take it off and make it into a cowboy steampunk version of the Joker gun. Anyway, it was a rifle shotgun thing, and it's 5-shot. And it's designated the MTS 255-12. That's the Russian 12-gauge shotgun 5-shot revolver long gun pistol-looking thing. Again, Russian. Anyway, because it looked like a giant pistol, someone decided to make a Derringer version by just chopping the barrel down and designated the OTS 62 5-shot 12-gauge pistol. But it's only supposed to fire less lethal rounds, so of course it's going to shoot the little 2-inch ones that look like flare gun cartridges. No, they made it fire 3-inch Magnum shells anyway. Fuck it, why not? They just chopped the barrel down. Russia. You might be wondering in the United States why we have a rule against 12-gauge pistols when they're just flare guns. Well, we make them weakened, but you can also find, yes, there are steel barrel ones that are odd chambered to where they can only take a flare gun cartridge. Even though you can make a flare gun sized cartridge that's totally lethal, it makes them within the limit that the ATF's like, okay, it's kind of not regulated. The reason for the pistol regulation, that's what it is in the 1930s the most commonly used weapon by criminals were pistols. They were trying to outlaw pistols entirely. That's it. But they weren't regulating shotguns or rifles that are long guns. So people thought, well, I want to have a pistol. I don't want to have something that big, a truck gun. I'll just chop the barrel down and cut off the buttstock. Very Russian-looking things. Happened all the time, including a pump action and break action double barrel 12-gauge, 88 Magnum-looking pistols. And the U.S. government said, no, we want anything pistol-like because of it being concealable. Then it's a concealability issue. That's already been addressed a couple of times. So they included a bunch of wording to prevent you from cutting down larger guns. And then they found out that the majority of Americans wanted to be able to have that little 22 pistol for going plinking. They were used commonly in fairs. You would fire with a rifle or a pistol because it's more challenging with a pistol to shoot targets. You would use deliberately weakened cartridges that amounted to using a pistol or even a shotgun primer with a BB gun pellet glued on the end as a bullet. So every pistol has to be outlawed? And that ran into a lot of pushback. And more importantly, the whole thing also included the idea that you were going to force people to turn over their guns by making them give the government $200 to own one. It wasn't illegal, it was just heavily taxed. Or, at that time it was a lot of money, by the way. Or you would buy them from them for, at the time, a lot of money, which would have been $20 or $10. It was actually a lot of money. You give the idea there. So when this didn't work, they left all the wording to outlaw all the conversions to pistols, even though that doesn't really help anything, and didn't outlaw the pistols. And that's why we have a bunch of rules that keep me from having my metal flare gun. A durable flare gun that can have a 5-year warranty cannot be purchased, except in France and Russia, where they let you have a cowboy version of it. For less lethal ammo, or just because it's goofy hanging on a wall. Joker mode. little bit of history, a little bit of fun, a lot of rabbit holes. Thanks for watching. Good day.